Hello everyone, I welcome you all to Ansarkari. So in this video, we'll be taking up the newspapers for 14th of February. So let's start with the analysis. So here we'll be looking into the Adani case. So the center, it has no objection to the Supreme Court panel, and government SEBI, they want to suggest to the court the committee's mandate and the possible names in a sealed cover to protect the market from any upsets. Because at this point of time, if obviously there is any information regarding this issue, so it can the market can go either of the ways. So to prevent that, government wants to provide that information in a sealed cover. So the proposal to be submitted at hearing on Friday. So that is going to be there on Friday. And our Solicitor General says that the remit of the committee would be very, very relevant because any unintentional message to international and domestic investors that even a regulatory or statutory authority needs monitoring by a committee appointed by the highest court of the country may have some adverse impact on the flow of the money also. So taking all these things into account, the things are being very minutely handled in this case, because obviously it can impact both the domestic investors and the foreign investors also. So top court upholds the constitution of Jammu and Kashmir delimitation panel, and on Monday, the Supreme Court dismissed a challenge to the constitution of the Jammu and Kashmir Delimitation Commission to readjust the constituencies in the new union territory. So Articles 2 and 3 of the Constitution, they enable the parliament to create new states and union territories. Accordingly, the two union territories, they have been created, that is Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, and that has been created under the Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act. So there is a delimitation commission also, and we know the purpose behind a delimitation commission. Article 3, it can always provide for readjustment of the constituencies in the newly constituted states or the union territories through the delimitation commission. So it is there in under Article 3. So Supreme Court said that we hold that there is no illegality associated with the establishment of the delimitation commission under the order of March 6, 2020. So here it is important you can find out more about the Indian Council of Historical Research. So it has no plans of rewriting the history, but is filling the gaps by incorporating all major personalities and events which are not part of the history books. And it has not launched any project to rewrite Indian history. So basically, they are only expanding the content and they are just filling the gaps. Retail inflation rises to 6.52%, again above the upper tolerance limit, which is 6%. So it has surpassed again the 6% mark in January, which is at a 3-month high. So inflation is still a concern for us, and RBI has been consecutively increasing the repo rate also. And right now, also few days ago, we just saw in the latest meeting of the MPC, we saw that it has increased the repo rate and now it stands at 6.5%. So the main focus right now is on controlling the inflation and ensuring that it falls below to the target level of 4%. So here we are seeing that rural inflation, which has outstripped the urban inflation in recent months, it firmed up from 6% in December to 6.85% in January. And in case of urban consumers, they face the retail price rise of 6% in January compared to 5.4% in December. So both the components have increased and thereby taking the retail inflation to the mark of 6.52%. Then Geosciences community calls for a broad panel of experts to power the heritage bill. So conservation effort, the draft Geo-Heritage Sites and Geo-Relics under the Prevention and Maintenance Bill 2022, it aims to be a law for the protection, preservation and maintenance of the Geo-Heritage Sites. So in order to protect them, it is important we have a comprehensive law regarding that. So when we talk about the definition, so the sites containing the georelics and the phenomena, stratigraphic type sections and geological structures and geomorphic landforms of the national and international interest would be covered under the uh, geoheritage sites. Then Geological Survey of India, it has declared 32 geoheritage sites or the National Geological Monuments for protection and maintenance. So you need to find out more about the Geological Survey of India. Then the bill prohibits the construction, repair, or renovation of any building in the area. So it prohibits that. And there, as a signatory to the UNESCO Convention on Protection of the World Cultural and Natural Heritage, India is required to have a law on the same, including the geoheritage. So since we are a signatory to this convention, so it is important that we have a law regarding this. And the bill is right now in draft stages. So we have looked into the definition. And apart from that, let me look if we have something else to be discussed, which is important. So right now, it is like in the draft stages. So we'll be looking into the more characteristics of this bill once they are there in the newspaper. So Haryana Police is to be awarded the President Color by our Home Minister. So you can find out more about this. And like it has completed 56 years of safety, security, and cooperation. So that is there, and they are being recognized for their contributions. So when we talk about an election of mayor in Delhi, after successful completion of the elections at the local level, we don't still don't have a mayor in Delhi, and that is obviously because of the political interest. So the Supreme Court, the matter went to the Supreme Court, and now it has held that the nominated members, they cannot vote, and now the elections again, it will be tried after 17th of February. So let's see how things go. So we hosted the Aero India Expo and showcases India's self-confidence. And the pictures, you can have a look at Trishul formation, which is being made by Sukhoi 30 MKIs of the Indian Air Force. Then we have in the next picture the light combat helicopter, which is Prachand and aerobatic team. Surya Kiran, it is displaying their skills at the Aero India show, which was held at Bengaluru. So this year's exhibition in Bengaluru has a participation of more than 80 countries along with 800 defense firms, which comprise of around 100 foreign and 700 Indian companies. So here again, the main thing and the main focus was being self-independence, being like making India Atmanirbhar. And likewise, all these things were being like focused more upon. We like also had recently we commissioned the INS Vikrant, which is our indigenous aircraft carrier. So the new India of the 21st century will neither miss sorry, it will neither miss any opportunity nor will it lack any effort. So we'll be tying up with UK for high-end defense technologies. So we talked about this here, like about the protection that the legislators, basically the member of parliaments, have regarding their words in the parliament. And here, what is important for us is Article 105 of the Constitution, which confers on members the freedom of speech in the House and immunity from interference by the court for anything that is said in the House. Thus, freedom of speech in the House is the most important privilege of a member of Parliament, which is subject only to the other provisions of the Constitution relating to the running of the House and the House rules. So that is there. And In a house where freedom of speech is the most important privilege of a member of the parliament, establishing defamatory or incriminatory statements as opposed to the critical comments which an MP has a right to make, that is important. And so we've like already discussed this issue in Indian Express. So whether it is regarding a hill station, a city which is located in a hill, or a city which is like basically in the plain area, so urban planning there cannot be an afterthought, especially in times when we are seeing the after effects of an unplanned urban development. So we know about the situation in Joshimath, which is there in Uttarakhand, and people had to be evacuated. Deep cracks developed in the houses and the hotels located over there because of land subsidence. So this resulted in loss of nearly 800 liters of water per second. And soon after the groundwater sources, it began drying up, even as the water flow reduced but never stopped. So, meanwhile, Joshimath, it has no system to manage the wastewater. Instead, the large-scale use of soak pit mechanism, it could exacerbate the land sinking and the ongoing infrastructure projects which are there regarding a dam construction, which is the Tapovan Vishnugarh Dam and the Hilang Marwari bypass road. That may also worsen the situation more, because obviously right now things are not going in a properly scientifically planned manner. So the problem in the hilly urban India, land subsidence incidents in the hilly urban India are becoming increasingly common, and it is not just limited to Joshimath. It is like spreading into certain regions of Jammu and Kashmir also. So an estimated 12.6% of India's land area is prone to landslides, especially in Sikkim, West Bengal, and Uttarakhand. And urban policy is making this thing worse, according to the National Institute of Disaster Management. So, construction in such a landscape is often driven by building bylaws that ignore the local geological and environmental factors. So, these things are ignored, and just under the garb of earning more and more profits, more construction is happening. So, consequently, land use planning in India's Himalayan towns and the Western Ghats is often ill conceived, adding to slope instability. So, that is there, and also the zone is also like highly prone to earthquakes. So given that we are still going ahead with an unplanned form of urbanization, and we have also discussed in detail that India lies in highly sensitive and risky seismic zone of 4 and 5, specifically when we talk about the northern India and the eastern India. So for the any site development in the hazardous zones, that needs assessment by the geologist and an evaluation of its potential impact on the buildings that are nearby. And rising flood risk is also there. So flood risk is the second issue. And obviously there is an issue of the glacial lake outburst phenomenon also, because of the high rate of melting of the glaciers, and this also is a concern. So, flood proofing Indian cities will require multiple measures, and not just in the hilly regions, also in Chennai, also we saw a situation of massive floods, and urban planners, they will have to step back from filling up the water bodies, canals, and drains and focus instead on enhancing the sewerage and the storm water drain networks. So, here what is important is the sewerage system. So existing sewerage system that needs to be reworked and expanded to enable wastewater drainage in low-lying urban geographies. And looking ahead, urban India does not have to embrace such risk. Instead, cities need to incorporate environmental planning, enhance the natural open spaces. So this is the first point. As a solution, we need to focus more upon incorporating environmental planning and a scientific planning, a sustainable planning module, and enhance the natural open spaces. We don't have to tinker more with the natural environment. So urban master plans, they need to consider the impact of the climate change and extreme weather. And Bengaluru needs to think of 125 millimeter per hour peak rainfall in the future as against the current 75 mm. So again, this is a situation and a prediction that obviously rainfall is going to increase in future. So we need to consider all this thing also. We talk about urban floods. Then urban authorities in India, they should assess and update the disaster risk and preparedness planning. This is another point which needs to be focused upon. Then early warning systems will also be critical here. And finally, each city needs to have a disaster management framework in place with large arterial roads that allow people and goods to move freely. So India's urban journey is not limited to an election cycle. It must plan for a multi-generational process. So, constitutional oath is not a mere formality. It is not just for the sake of formality that an oath is taken. A constitution is the basic law that lays the foundation for the governance of a country. And specifically, when we talk about the Indian democracy, so here we have the constitutional supremacy. So, it lays down broad policy or directives for the authorities and institutions tasked with its implementation. So, basic eligibility criteria for the appointment to several high constitutional offices are prescribed there in the Constitution, yet many silent disqualifications operate, and these are implied and read into the eligibility criteria by the courts. So, the law and the integrity of the institution for which the functionary is chosen that is important. And in the B.R. Kapoor versus the state of Tamil Nadu 2001 case, the governor's appointment of Jayalalitha as the chief minister, despite her conviction for a criminal offense, was called in question. And Article 164 of the Constitution does not prescribe any disqualification for the appointment of a chief minister. So this is important. In Article 173, however, disqualifies a person with prior conviction from being a member of the legislature. So a person who's been convicted of a criminal offense, he or she cannot be appointed as a member of the legislature, and there are no such disqualifications when we come to appointment of a chief minister. So the court was confronted with a question of whether it could import a disqualification for a person being appointed as a chief minister when none was prescribed by our constitution, and the Supreme Court said yes. So a person can be prevented when we talk about the appointment in case of chief minister. So the Supreme Court held that the will of the people as expressed through the majority party prevails only if it is in accord with the constitution, because obviously you cannot violate the constitution. So the governor is sworn to preserve, protect and defend the constitution and the laws as given by article 159, and the governor cannot do anything that is contrary to the constitution and the laws. So the governor's act of administering the oath to Jayalalitha after her conviction was declared as unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. Same goes for the judges of the High Court and the Supreme Court also. And so inability to adhere to the constitution as per your oath is also prescribed to be a disqualification by a full bench of the Madras High Court in case of case Haja Sharif of 1983. So it is important that you need to adhere to your oath, and it is not just merely a formality. So, selection of the judges to limit the eligibility for the appointment of a High Court judge to a minimum of 10 years of the legal practice prescribed in Article 217. It makes a mockery of the integrity and the independence of the judiciary. Such a facile reading turns the solemn assurance of an impartial and fair judiciary into a hollow promise. So, just as breach of the oath will result in the removal, adherence to the Constitution should precede taking the oath of office. So, the events leading up to the pronouncement of the Supreme Court regarding the selection of Justice Victoria Goveri, it reveals the fault lines between the government and the judiciary, and the selection process came under a cloud once the CJI expressed in open court that materials now brought before the collegium they were not available earlier, and the collegium relies on the government's agencies to produce the background materials of the persons recommended to be judges. So there is basically intelligence bureau involved in this process, so that basically does all the homework, and then collegium has to recommend the names to the government, which are finally approved by the government. So in this case, basically we saw that after the recommendation was approved by the government regarding this judge, so later on a petition was filed on which was basically alleging her to be, basically alleged her to be involved in hate speech against the minorities. So now things cannot be like reversed back in this situation. So basically this is raising questions over the integrity, independence of the judiciary, and obviously this would be impacting the trust and the confidence of the people in the Indian judicial system. So the transparency and the accountability in the selection of judges alone will ensure an independent judiciary. I would repeat, transparency and the accountability in the selection of the judges. So this process, the selection process of the judges needs to be made much more transparent, because obviously we are living in a democracy, so it is important that everything remains transparent as far as possible, and the preamble to the constitution should permeate selection of every judge. So worried about the pending transfers, Supreme Court says a lot more needs to be done. The court had in the past, it wondered how some collegium recommendations they were cleared overnight while others took ages to be cleared. So basically this is definitely like showing the government's discretion when it comes to the final approval that is to be given by the union government. And in the hearing which was held on 3rd Feb, it put the government on a 10-day ultimatum to clear the pending transfers in the high courts. So we saw that these names were then approved by the government, and the delay in the transfers not only affects the administration of the justice, but it also creates an impression as if there are third party sources interfering in this whole process. Again, it would definitely erode our confidence in this entire process, in the judiciary, in the union government. So this is not healthy for a longer term when we look at a longer perspective in terms of the democracy. So now the Supreme Court is, like there are no vacancies in the Supreme Court. It is functioning at its full strength, at full potential of 34 members. And basically, this needs to be appreciated that yes, the current Chief Justice of India has ensured that the vacancies in the at least Supreme Court, they are completely filled up. So here, when we talk about the Russia-Ukraine war, so the Russian reluctance to leave Ukraine is the real problem. So we are not seeing this war to end any real time soon. And right now, the situation is just escalating because of supply of more arms, and also the 1 year anniversary of this war is also very near. So basically, Russia is involving in much more escalation, and also Ukraine also because it has been supplied with the weapons by the NATO countries. So Russia's unwillingness to exit from its neighboring country was responsible for prolonging the Ukraine crisis. And our national security advisor said that India has an important voice in resolving year-long crisis. We have great admiration for Indian diplomacy. This having been said, we do not have a shortage at the moment for the mediators, but we have an acute shortage of Russia's willingness to stop this war and get out of its neighboring country. So here it is like the real problem is not of mediators, but it is of Russia's unwillingness to stop this war or to get out of Ukraine and stop this war, stop the loss of lives that is happening there. So we see that an ex-Supreme Court judge has been appointed as a governor. So we talked about that, like there should be some cooling off period between an appointment. And obviously, this raises questions regarding the independence of the judiciary. And then again, basically, obviously, if you know that if you can be appointed as a governor in the future, there is some possibility. So that can lead to some basically discretion or any favoring to the government by any judge. So this again like deteriorates our trust and confidence in the judiciary and raises questions about its independence. So a union law minister says that the whole ecosystem is once again in full swing on the appointment of a governor. India will be guided by the people as per the provisions of the constitution. So it's basically saying that obviously, everything would be working as per the constitution and no favoritism would be done. And without naming anyone, he said they should be better, they should better understand that they can no longer treat India as their personal fiefdom. And he tweeted that the whole ecosystem is once again in full swing on the appointment of the governor. They should better understand that they can no more treat India as their personal fiefdom. And now India will be guided by the people of India as per the provisions of the Constitution of India. So basically, this has a little bit of political element also. So he's saying that now India will be guided. So it is not now, it has been like since our independence, it has been guided by the Constitution and also by the people of India. So there is going to be a Trifeds Adi Mahotsav in Delhi. This will be inaugurated by Prime Minister on 16th of February. So here we can find out what is TriFed. It stands for the Tribal Cooperative Marketing Developmental Federation of India, which is a flagship event which will feature the exhibition come the sale of the tribal handicrafts, handloom paintings, the jewelry, cane and bamboo, pottery, food, natural products, and tribal cuisine, among many artifacts, at over 200 stalls inside the stadium. So more than 1,000 tribal artisans and artists from 28 states and UTs will take part in this festival. So Shashi Tharoor says that there is a need for a comprehensive law to protect the health workers And he cited a data that 75% of the doctors in the country, they had faced physical abuse of some kind and demanded comprehensive legislation to check violence against the healthcare professionals. So CGI wants the high courts to ensure use of virtual court technology, basically e-courts, says it is here to stay forever. So we know that depending more upon or shifting towards e-courts would be helping in enhancing the efficiency of the judicial system, reducing the judicial pendency, and also reducing the cost of seeking justice. And definitely it is going to be environment friendly at the same time. Now again, China is accusing USA that it sent over 10 balloons into their airspace. So basically they're blaming each other. So you need to open your atlas and locate where is Bamuk located. So Russia pushes advance on the Bamuk and it bolsters the defenses. So fierce battles raged outside Bamuk as the Russian forces they pushed their advance on the eastern city with heavy shelling and infantry attacks. So again, situation the war is just escalating further. So Adani is said to claim that plans are on track and assets are generating cash. So there's no problem of liquidity, and but still the stocks are sliding down. So Adani Group it sought to assure the investors, saying that group entities they have cash generating assets and the plans are on track. So under the G20, we are discussing with nations regarding regulation of the cryptocurrencies. And so, a finance minister said that the crypto assets and Web3 were relatively new and these are evolving sectors as of now. They required significant international collaboration for any specific legislation on these sectors to be fully effective. So, let's shift to the Financial Express. So the countries which are basically investing in Uttar Pradesh is United Kingdom, Japan, South Korea, Netherlands, Singapore, Mauritius, Denmark, Australia, United Arab Emirates, and Italy. And talking about the achievements, so more basically creating more jobs and more of private and the capital investments. Obviously, this would be driving up the GDP of UP and hence India. So the stickiness of core inflation is an issue and it has increased the chances of another round of rate hike by RBI in the current cycle because retail inflation is again increasing and basically it has increased in the month of January 2023, and as we know that core inflation is still at the upper end and which is also not flexible. So with an adverse base effect in the food inflation and largely unyielding coal inflation. Analysts, they had expected a marginal rise in headline inflation in January. So SEBI steps up its vigil on the mutual fund industry, and basically it is closely watching the auditors to undertake forensic acquisition and extraction, including imaging of the devices, and comes on the heels of proposal to hold the trustees of the asset management companies more accountable. So there are instances of front running and market manipulation. They may have pushed the SEBI to step up the guard, and there have been many front running cases in the past decade as well. So here you can find out about what do you mean by insider trading. So Union Prime Minister says that focus on green concerns. India is committed to providing reliable and affordable power supply to people while keeping environmental concerns as the core priority. So sustainable development in every aspect is very important. So, talking about India's defense prowess, the Prime Minister says that India has rejuvenated its defense sector in the last 8 to 9 years. We just consider this to be just the beginning, and we aim to take the defense exports to $5 billion by 2024-25. So, again, globally, also different countries are focusing more upon the defense sector with an increase in the defense expenditure. However, in this year's budget, we saw that basically there was not a substantial increase in the defense expenditure of India. So we have talked a lot about energy transition, that how it should go ahead, how can this entire process be a just energy transition which is like based on equity, which is justiciable in nature, which is again sustainable, and which can like ensure energy security at the same time, and how like right now we cannot like directly jump onto the green initiatives because that requires a lot of investment. So how for the time being we can manage and improve our efficiency in the coal sector also. So we have like talked about this in a lot of detail, so you can watch our previous videos for this thing. So that is very important. So the IMF chief says that markets have reasons to be upbeat on the economy. They have good reason to be more upbeat because what they are finally seeing is the US likely to avoid a recession. They are also seeing China reopening. So that's why basically we are seeing the capital markets are bullish as of now, specifically in the long term, because there are two reasons that we expect that the recession fear is not too serious as of now. There can be a like soft recession. And apart from that, the Chinese markets, they have also reopened. So these are the two positive factors. And we are seeing globally that inflation is also moderating. So all these things are kind of push factors which are making the investors bullish as of now. So our defense exports, they are trebling as of now. And again, as like we discussed that we have a target of having a defense exports of around $5 billion by 2024-25. and we are focusing more on domestic manufacturing of key military gears to create more local jobs and also reduce our cost, reduce our dependence on the imports. And India has transformed its defense sector in the last 8 to 9 years. So here we have like light combat aircraft Tejas, we have HTT-40, we have Dornier light utility helicopter, we have light combat helicopter, that is Prachand, we have advanced light helicopters. So right now we use the leverage of huge imports to attract investment in the domestic industry. So India's funds earmarked for the domestic industry, they have risen from 57% to around 64%. So today India is not just a market for the defense companies, it is also a potential defense partner. And Prime Minister says that I call on the India's private sector to invest more and more in the country's defense sector. And we are like exporting defense products to around 75 countries in the world, which includes to Philippines, to Mauritius, Ecuador. And we have like BrahMos missiles, which have been developed in collaboration with Russia. So defense sector is really important. So talking about the millet-led growth, and that too at a global level. So India will be launching the Millet International Initiative for Research and Awareness, which is MIRA, to launch coordinate research on the food crops at the global level. So this initiative is part of India's efforts to get the world to observe 2023 as the International Year of Millets, as has been declared by the United Nations. So what are millets and why are they in the spotlight now? So they are core cereals. They are also called as nutritive cereals because of their nutritive values. So they are seeds of grass varieties that have been cultivated for thousands of years for human consumption and as fodder also. The Indian variety includes jowar, bajra, kangi. Little millets includes kutki. It is like ragi. Then we have chena. So all these are the Indian variety of millets. So millets, they are grown in more than 130 countries. They are eaten by more than 500 million people in Asia and Africa. So India has pushed for making this year as International Year of Millets. And 17 million ton average annual production of millets in India over 2019-20. So India is the world's largest producer of millets, and 4.5% is the compound annual growth rate projected for the global millet export during this period of 2021-26. So the push to millets at home basically in India. So India has been implementing a program as Nutri Cereals, that is millets, under the National Food Security Mission in 212 districts of the 14 states since 2018-19. So basically, under this initiative, incentives are provided to the farmers through states and UTs on the crop production and the production technologies, on cropping system based demonstrations. Then there are production and distribution of certified seeds of the newly released varieties, and regarding the pest management. So basically, incentives are being provided for the farmers to the farmers so as to encourage more production of millets. And millets, they are covered under the National Food Security Act. They are supplied to the beneficiaries under the targeted PDS system that we have. They are procured, they are stored, and then distributed by the state governments under the decentralized procurement, which is done by the Food Corporation of India. So it is important to remember that they are covered under this National Food Security Act. And millets have been made central to the meals planned for the G20 delegates who are visiting India to popularize the core cereals, and also like even during the meal times in the parliament, basically millets are majorly now served. So various union ministries, state governments, they are organizing events throughout the year to concentrate and to promote the millets among the citizens. So, why are millets so important for India and for the world? So, the Food and Agriculture Organization says that millets are an ideal solution for countries to increase their self-sufficiency and reduce the reliance on imported cereal grains as they can grow on the arid lands. We know that they're climate resilient crops, and obviously they are like safer when we talk about the food security. So countries, they can be self-reliant, they can be self-sufficient when it comes to food security. Apart from that, India has long acknowledged millet's place in its history, and although nutri cereals, they suffered significant reversals in area under the cultivation and production, as well as the role in India's food baskets, because more often they are associated as a poor man's food. So that's why, like, it is kind of a question over your status if you are eating millets. But obviously that's how it shouldn't be looked at, because they are very like highly nutritive. And again, uh, basically they can also help in doubling the farmers income, which the target has been missed by the government, but yes, they can play an important role in that also. And also food security, given India is going to be the world's most populous country very soon, so they have like key nutrients, like they're high on protein and they have lower glycemic acid, and with obvious implications for health in terms of the reduced risk of diabetes and associated ailments. They can also help us in fighting the malnutrition problem in India, which is very serious. So all these benefits are there, and like we are highly dependent upon wheat and rice, so it can help us in multiple ways. So they are like a win-win kind of a situation for us, and definitely we need to start shifting gradually over millets. So that's all for today. Thank you for joining Ansarkari. I hope you liked today's analysis video, and if you find it useful, do not forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button, and please share this video as much as possible to benefit maximum people, and you'll be getting the PDF link in the description box. Thank you so much for joining us today.